here to talk a little baseball with us. He is the voice of Team USA Baseball, of High Point Basketball, and of ESPN and ACC Network properties, calling all sorts of sports. Calling all sorts of sports
is fine.
Calling sorts of sports. he sort of calls them. Permar fumbling over his introduction for a good guy who joins us now. Daron Vaught on the air link. What's going on, man? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. This is wild with the video setup. My first time visiting via this. This is crazy.
I'm 4 days in, and I'm still like forgetting that somebody's looking at me as I'm talking. So, yes, there we are. All right, Daron, you, much like when I talk Trip Tracy, I am not breaking down the X's and O's. For people who want to hear, what I think of the Braves rotation or the middle infields of the NL West, that will not be this discussion. But you are my guy for baseball philosophy, right? For what should be in baseball. And baseball went through some philosophy discussions as part of the most recent labor standoff, right? There was questions about defensive changes and, to tinker with things that are considered sacred and DHs and all that stuff. So I asked you yesterday, what was your reaction when you saw 34-year-old Clayton Kershaw pulled from a game where he had thrown 80 pitches through 70 innings and he had been perfect?
I think I was maybe a little surprised, like most fans. Not as surprised because if you remember, Dave Roberts has done this before. Sure. There have been, through 7 innings of a Major League Baseball game, a perfect 7 innings thrown around about 300,000 times, okay, in the history of the Major Leagues. We have seen 23 perfect games ever.
Okay.
Dave Roberts, to date, is the only manager to pull his pitcher after those perfect 7 innings, and he's done it twice.
Okay.
Now, I wasn't that upset about it because you do the math, right? Near 300,000, it's 1 in about 13,000 of every one of these instances results in a perfect game. That is less than 1% of a percent. I mean, it is minuscule, the chances of it happening. I know we want to pick and choose our spots about where we're romantic about it and where we're a little bit more analytical about it, but the fact of the matter is starting pitchers have not gone very far so far this season, and it's because of the short on-ramp with the labor disputes. I mean, if you want, I see a lot of blame being thrown toward Dave Roberts. 2 things about that. One, I will always defer to the future Hall of Famer. If Clayton Kershaw wanted to be out there in the 8th, he would have been out there in the 8th because he makes way more money than Dave Roberts. He's a way more important asset to that organization.
And you think he had the authority if he wanted to stay out there that he could have?
100%. And that's one of the old school elements of this that people miss, right? Some of the old head baseball fans want to say, "Oh, well, the manager pulled him out." Like, the veteran pitcher always has say. Always. I mean, if you're a Clayton Kershaw, you have the benefit of the doubt. Had he said to Dave Roberts, "I'm going to go out to the 8th and we'll see what happens. I think I'm okay with this pitch count," he would have been allowed to do it. So I think that's one element that people miss. The other is the most pitches a starting pitcher has thrown this Major League season is 96.
Okay.
I mean, he's throwing pretty efficient innings through 7.
He could have finished the game with 16 more pitches, Daron.
At that pace, possibly. Possibly. I'm not saying you're wrong. It's okay. It's okay to both understand and hate something. I just want more people to understand it.
No, I got you. And there's certainly a case to be made in the circumstances that it's early in the season. They got a short spring training. He's 34 years old. But and here's the thing, and it's not just baseball, but so this is a broader sports discussion because Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, just talked about how resting dudes is a problem. And here's the conflict. Dave Roberts made the right move because Dave Roberts' job is to win the World Series for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And he is singularly focused on that, right? But collectively, baseball has a job of being entertaining and providing something to sports. So even if he doesn't get a perfect game, what are the ramifications of the 12-year-old who's in the stands who saw a perfect game go to a last strike, and then somebody hit it, and he remembers that he's hooked on baseball, right? And it's the same thing with the defensive shift. We're like, no, I'm doing that because I am raising the chances of me winning the game. We know percentage-wise where he's likely to hit it, and that's where we're going to stand, guys, versus baseball saying, no, we need people to see, the game as we envisioned it and grew up with it, and weighing that factor. And you talk about realization. I often, when I am granted the honor of a microphone, whether picking one up myself or asked to fill in on the Adam Gold Show, I often try and remind people that no, I don't think professional sports are rigged, but I think that everyone admits there's an entertainment value to some things, and whether it's superstars don't foul out as often in the NBA or whatever it might, strike zones for superstars in MLB, like, we admit there's an entertainment value to it. I don't know how you compel a manager to leave a guy in that situation, but am I crazy in saying that in itself is kind of the baseline problem that baseball and other sports are grappling with, of where does entertainment come in when people are smart and have the numbers enough to figure out to make the game kind of more boring for the purposes of just winning it?
Yeah, no, it's a valid question. It's a fair point, I think, about sports across the board, because as these leagues and industries have become so lucrative, right, that's where you get the mixed messaging where, okay, this is entertainment and solely entertainment, right? Because we got to keep advertisers happy because we're on TV all the time, because these dudes are worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. But at the same time, again, here comes this old school mentality from a time where players weren't making as much money, leagues and teams weren't making as much money, and the object was to go out and do your best to win. And that was the only objective. So I would say two things to your point about maybe the child that is at the game and they saw. I would counter with, they didn't see a perfect game, but you know what they did see? They saw 7 perfect innings of a future Hall of Famer throwing. And it was a pretty damn good day, right? Like, they saw some pretty impressive pitching when they went to the yard. If
you already like baseball, I think you might get that. But I think like young Hayes Permar would have needed some stakes of like, wait a minute. This, like, we're in the 9th inning and now he's put for a perfect game. Like, I get it now. Like, everyone's standing, and again, there's a whole part of like the stands start, the buzz gets greater. Like, even if he doesn't get it, the buzz of being in the 9th inning of a perfect game, I feel like, is different than recognizing that he threw 7 perfect innings. I don't know.
It's true. And my counter to your shift argument was going to be a super nerdy baseball thing too, where Joey Gallo lines out to the right fielder who is standing exactly where they predicted he was going to hit it. And, the hit probability of the exit velocity and the angle and the placement of the baseball is like a 99% chance of getting a hit, but it's right to a guy because they planned it perfectly. In my mind, that's great defensive alignment, right? I see that and I'm like, man, that is some expertise in the managerial part of this game. I love that stuff.
Is that how you're telling to the 12-year-old? Look, son, did you see the percentage play off the? I won't even be able to name all the mumbo jumbo of baseball terms you just threw at me. Bat velocity and launch angle and all that other stuff. But like, yeah,
you break out the spray charts. You're pointing them to a 12-year-old. You're
son,
like, man, Gallo always hits to right. He hits it right.
Like, I don't know. I mean, again, that is. Nobody's got the right answer, and it's all about perspectives. But again, I feel like these are the discussions that sports leagues are having, in the same way. And again, it's not just baseball. Greg Popovich is like, my job is to go as far in the postseason as possible, and I get paid the most and get the most acclaim for doing that, as do my players. So we're all good with resting dudes during the season, right? But like, that stinks for ticket buying guy and for TV guy,
Yeah, and we saw something else in baseball in the past couple of days, too, with Francisco Dubon, who is the pitcher for the San Francisco Giants.
I was going to ask you about this one, too. Yep.
Yeah,
keep
so
going.
They're up big. He bunts for a hit. And there's this unwritten rules thing where the Padres are upset because they think he did it to show them up, when really he's just trying to get on base. He's trying to score runs. And what people don't realize about this, too, I think the more obvious part is that the margins between teams making playoffs, players making rosters, all of these nuances to the larger picture of the game, the margins for error for guys have become so tenuous and so progressively smaller over time because, again, of the money. I mean, percentage points on an OPS for a baseball player, on base plus slugging percentage. Percentage points can amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a contract extension, or being traded in this weird scenario that we all take for granted as normal human beings, where a guy can just be swapped from one organization to another on opposite sides of the country and be forced to live in a totally different place, which is something I know that they accept, but it's a weird nuance. And again, it's just all so tenuous. For instance, with the new collective bargaining agreement too, tiebreakers for play-ins for the Major League Baseball postseason have not been established in the same way. It is run differential largely is what it's going to be. And if that's the case, and you're under the assumption that if you're somebody who's telling a guy to run out a fly ball because there's a slight chance that the guy might drop it and you need to get on base, right? And you got to play the game of inches. If you're one of those people, you need to be okay with scoring as many runs as possible, because that could matter in game 162, 163.
That was going to be my other question. For philosophically, are we to a point now where baseball is accepting of no, there's no we're up to like unwritten mercy rule type stuff? Like, because
you're asking it, so no, we're not, right?
Okay. Well, good. Because specifically the one you said of don't ask me, don't put an incentive clause based on my on base percentage, and then tell me that I can't do everything I can to try and get on base. Obviously, there's for the good of the team sacrifice stuff, but yeah, don't ask me to because we're being nice to the other team, don't ask me to sacrifice my personal stats.
And also, again, we're having these multiple conversations, and they're all very layered, but one sort of lends itself to the other. In our first discussion, when you're talking about the 12-year-old boy or girl who is watching this baseball game and maybe has a chance to get hooked, if one team has their foot off the gas pedal for half the game because it's a blowout, what does that say? What does that communicate to a young fan?
Yep. Daron Vaught joining us. You can check him out this weekend, or just today for Notre Dame Duke.
All weekend, baby. I've got tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday, Notre Dame at Duke, number 10 team in the country, the Fighting Irish, one of 4 ACC teams in the top 10 currently. And then I'll be on Georgia Tech at UNC on Sunday, in sort of we'll call it an Easter egg of a feature on the broadcast. I'm going to be the analyst for that one.
Oh, wow. So who's doing play-by-play?
I'll be with Matt Krause for that one.
All right, give us the North Carolina power rankings of baseball teams, if you will. UNC, Duke, NC State, Wake Forest, ECU, those 5. No disrespect to App and Charlotte. I know they're out there. If there's somebody else that deserves to be in there, you can tell me. But of those 5, the 4 ACC schools and ECU, because I know they're big baseball, how would you power rank right now? From 1 would be most likely to make it to the College World Series and get screwed by the NCAA and not get to play for the championship, and 5 would be least likely to have that happen to them. Power rank those North Carolina programs for me.
Well, all right. Even if these are genuine rankings of the better teams, NC State's at the top, but it does feel like that, given your credentials there, they're always at the top, right? They're always number 1.
No, I just meant to make that just power rank them. We could take out the other the conditions.
Yeah, I like NC State. I think they and North Carolina are probably 1A and 1B here. They've both recently been ranked, recently fallen out of the top 25. The Tar Heels had sort of a weird upset loss that they gave up earlier in the week to North Carolina A&T. How about the Aggies? Second win in program history over the Tar Heels. But they're looking to bounce back. It's a tough ACC, too, is the thing. It's been really fluid, ACC teams being ranked, being not ranked. We've got, again, 4 in the top 10, as I mentioned. So I would put State and Carolina at that top tier. ECU started the season ranked. They lost their ace pitcher prior to the beginning of the season, but have sort of cobbled together a nice little stretch up to this point, and leading into conference play, they're sort of hitting their stride. I've got a lot of faith in Cliff Godwin. They were picked to win that conference, the American, in the preseason, so I think at the very least they'll compete for it. They've got a chance at an at-large if they don't win the conference, but that's not typically the case. with the Americans. So I'll put them third. Duke began the season ranked 23rd in the country in the preseason rankings. They just it hasn't panned out for them. They've got a lot of new faces in the lineup that are going to be really good players and have sort of come on in recent weeks. But it's been a tough season for Chris Pollard and company.
And you didn't say Wake, so does that mean they're below?
Wait, no, let me explain things with Wake. Wake they've always got dudes, right? There's a guy, Ryan Cusick, who's in the Braves organization right now. He's a minor leaguer, and he pumps cheddar, man. Like, he throws 100 plus, and that's just one example of the dudes that they always have. They've got a great pitcher, maybe a top 10 pitcher in the country right now, named Eric Adler. And they just always kind of are middle of the road team-wise. So it's tough to consider them bad, but you also can't really put them in like a hunt for Omaha necessarily.
All right.
So I like the program. I have a lot of fun when I do games over there at the Couch. They call it their home ballpark. But I guess that's why they slipped my mind, sort of a Freudian thing. I just don't consider them.
And am I crazy, or at this time a year ago, State wasn't necessarily looking that sharp, right? Wasn't their run sort of later in the season? They got hot in some series and then obviously in the tournament plays?
Yeah, which was uncharacteristic for them because in 2020, where the season was shortened, they were off to a scorching hot start. In 2019, they did sort of the same thing. They won, I think, 21 of their first 23 games or something like that in 2019. So, yeah, it was uncharacteristic then. The thing with what Elliott has going on at NC State is that they've had to get some people healthy. Get some people assimilated into the lineup. They obviously had Tommy White, who took the college baseball world by storm that first weekend and has continued to hit. He's obviously come down to earth a little bit as a freshman in the ACC, but settling in when it comes tournament time, I think will be what he is, and he'll have found his level somewhere in between there, which is a really good hitter. And State's strength coming back was that they had their entire starting rotation back. So they had to get a guy like Sam Highfill healthy, who also he was a two-way guy in their shorthanded game and got those couple of base hits off of Kumar Rocker against Vanderbilt. But Highfill's a really good pitcher, and it has been presumed to be their ace coming into this season. And about midway through, he's just now sort of getting back in a groove. So they're going to be fine. And again, they tend to go on these types of runs at some point during the season. They haven't really made a really hot streak yet, so it might be coming.
Daron Vaught, check him out all this weekend on ACC Network Plus. You can find him all over the place, calling sorts of sports.
Sometimes, I do the lottery now. That's a sort of sport.
That's right. That is right. That's the best sport because everybody wins. Calling all sorts of sports. Our friend Daron Vaught. We appreciate the baseball discussion, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, my man. Appreciate you.